I always thought betrayal had a sound. A gunshot. A slammed door. A scream in the night. Turns out, it doesn't. It comes as a whisper, soft as a lover's secret, seeping through thin walls while you're sitting in the dark with a coffee gone cold. And once you hear it, you can't unhear it. It started with a piece of paper I wasn't meant to see. A bank statement tucked between bills on my desk, slipped there by mistake or arrogance, I'll never know. My son's name on top. But the numbers, too many zeros, too many transfers, too much moving money for a man who claims every month he's barely getting by. My gut tightened. Something was off. I told myself to wait, to breathe, to talk in the morning. But midnight has a way of stripping you down to the raw truth. The house was quiet, floorboards creaking under my slow steps. That's when I heard it, his voice through the half-closed door. Low, intimate. I love you, he murmured. But the name he said next wasn't his wife's. A cold spike hit my chest. I leaned closer, barely breathing, the wall paint icy against my back. Then came the words that ripped everything wide open. Be patient, baby. Just a little longer. Soon it'll all be ours. The old man won't know what hit him. Ours. The house. My life. My blood. I stayed frozen in the dark, the taste of iron on my tongue. Every board in this home carried memories of sacrifice, his first bike ride, dinners with his mother, the years I worked 2 jobs so he could study without debt. Now every board carried the weight of his plot against me. I should have barged in, should have grabbed that phone and demanded the truth. But I didn't. Rage is quicksand. Step too fast and you sink. So I let him think I hadn't heard. Let him think I was just a tired old man drifting toward silence. He was wrong. That night, I sat at the edge of my bed until dawn, eyes burning, chest heavy, staring at the shadows stretch across the floor. He thought he could bury me under lies and forged promises. He thought I'd hand him the keys. I whispered it to myself, voice raw in the morning light. He wants my house. He'll choke on it first. Morning felt like sand in my mouth. Bitter, dry, rough. He came down the stairs whistling, like a man without a care in the world. Toast popped from the old kitchen toaster, and he buttered it with the same hands that had been caressing another woman just hours before. Sleep well, Dad, he asked, eyes too bright. I nodded, swallowing the acid rising in my throat. Like a rock. He grinned, not catching the irony. Or maybe pretending not to. That's the thing about liars. They rely on you to play dumb. After breakfast, he left for work. A construction site on the west side, or so he claimed. I watched his truck roll down the driveway, engine coughing, taillights flashing red against the morning fog. The moment he was gone, I grabbed my jacket. Years in the army taught me how to follow without being seen. It wasn't hard. He drove like he owned the road, never checking mirrors, never suspecting a shadow behind him. 20 minutes later, his truck turned not toward the job site, but into a quiet street lined with trimmed hedges and identical brick houses. Middle-class perfection. I parked 2 blocks away, boots crunching on frosted asphalt. My breath fogged in the air as I cut through backyards, crouching behind a shed until I had a clear view. There she was. A woman in a red coat opened the door. My son leaned in, kissed her, soft, familiar. Not the clumsy kind of secret affair. No, this was practiced, like a man greeting his real home. I snapped a photo with my phone. The shutter click sounded louder than it should have in the still morning. My hands shook not from age, but from fury. Proof. The kind you don't argue with. I waited. 30 minutes passed. He carried groceries inside. Played with 2 kids on the front lawn like he'd done it 1,000 times. Then, when she stepped closer to him, I heard her voice. You sure your wife won't find out? He laughed. She knows. She's fine with it. Just hold on, baby. Once the old man signs the house over, we're set. You'll never have to worry again. The world tilted. His official wife knew? And she agreed to keep quiet? My jaw clenched so hard my teeth ached. This wasn't just an affair. This was strategy. A full-scale siege against me and everything I owned. I crept back to my car, hands numb on the steering wheel. My phone screen lit with the photos I'd just taken, him holding another woman's waist, kids clinging to his legs, smiles wide like a perfect picture for a Christmas card. Only it wasn't Christmas. It was treason. At home, I spread the bank statements across my desk, transfers lining up with dates. Money funneled into accounts I didn't recognize. One deposit matched the day I saw the shiny SUV in that other driveway. My son's name wasn't on the registration. Hers was. I leaned back in the chair, the leather creaking under my weight. A bitter laugh escaped my throat. My boy had built two families on lies, both balancing on the spine of one man, me. The evening brought another performance. He and his wife came by for dinner. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, the smells of normal life filling the house. She smiled sweetly, pouring me wine, acting like the perfect daughter-in-law. "Dad," she said, "have you thought about what we talked about last week? About maybe transferring the deed to the house early? You know, just to make things easier down the line." I stabbed a piece of chicken with my fork, holding her gaze. "Easier for who?" She shifted, eyes flicking toward him. He put on his best concerned face. "We just don't want you to stress about bills, Dad. We'll take care of everything." The lies tasted like ash. I forced a smile. "You're right. Maybe it's time I stop worrying so much." His eyes lit up. Too fast. Too greedy. They thought the fish had bitten the hook. Later that night, when they were gone, I went into his room. Quiet, careful, every step measured. The floorboards groaned like they knew I wasn't supposed to be there. In the closet, behind his work boots, sat a black metal safe. Combination lock, but not closed all the way. My pulse pounded as I pulled it open. Inside, cash bundles, a stack of envelopes and papers. Legal documents with my name on them. My signature, but not mine. Smooth, practiced forgeries. A deed transfer already filled in, just waiting for the right moment to slide under my pen. I traced a finger over the fake signature. He thought he'd already won. Thought I'd sign without reading, or worse, he'd push these through while I was distracted, maybe sick, maybe half dead. I shut the safe slowly, carefully, leaving everything as I'd found it. My heart was hammering, but my mind was colder than ice. He wanted war. Fine. I've fought wars before. And this one would be personal. Sunday dinners used to mean something in this house. The smell of roast beef, Ellen humming in the kitchen, my son laughing at jokes that weren't even funny. Those days were gone. Now the air was thick with something else, expectation. Greed. They sat across from me, perfectly rehearsed. He in his press shirt, tie still hanging like he'd rushed straight from work. She with her polite smile, sliding the bowl of potatoes toward me like nothing ugly lingered beneath her skin. "Dad," he began, voice soft, almost sympathetic. "We need to talk." I set down my fork. "Go ahead." His wife leaned forward, her perfume too sweet, making my stomach turn. "It's about the house. We think it would be smart to put it in our name now. Just paperwork, really. For the future." "For the future," I repeated, letting the words hang like smoke. He nodded eagerly. "Yeah, that way you don't have to stress about property taxes, maintenance, all that. We'll take care of it. You can relax." Relax. I almost laughed. They thought I'd fold. That I was tired. Weak. Ready to sign away 40 years of sweat like it meant nothing. I leaned back in my chair, letting silence stretch until their smiles twitched. Then I nodded. "Maybe you're right." His shoulders dropped in relief. Hers too. For a moment, I saw the greed flicker behind their eyes, like wolves who'd just scented blood. "Really, Dad?" he asked too fast. "Sure," I said, my tone flat. "I'll look at the papers. Bring them by tomorrow." They both smiled, the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. They thought they'd won. But the war hadn't even started. Later that night, after they left, I sat in his room again. The safe was there, heavy and smug in the closet. Same one I'd peeked into the night before. Only this time, I wasn't just curious. I needed to know exactly what game he was playing. The dial turned smooth under my fingers. A click, then another. The door swung open, metal groaning like it didn't want to reveal what was inside. Cash bundles stacked like bricks. Enough to raise questions. But that wasn't what made my pulse spike. It was the documents. My name, scrawled in ink I never touched. Gift deeds, transfer papers, all stamped and ready. My signature forged, neat and confident, like he'd been practicing. There was even a witness line signed by someone I didn't recognize. I held one up to the light, the paper trembling in my hands. Every line screamed theft, fraud, betrayal. This wasn't his son planning for his father's old age. This was a predator laying a trap. My breath came hard and shallow. Rage burned through me, but beneath it, something colder took hold. Calculation. I slipped everything back exactly where it was, closed the safe, adjusted the boots in front of it so he'd never suspect I'd been there. When I returned to my room, the mirror caught my reflection. I barely recognized the man staring back. His jaw was tight, eyes hollowed with fury, but under that, something sharper gleamed. A soldier's patience. They thought I'd sign, thought I'd walk blind into their little scheme. Instead, I'd let them believe it. I'd nod, I'd smile, I'd even hold the pen. And then, when they least expected it, I'd pull the ground out from under both of them. Because this wasn't about a house anymore. It was about showing my son who I really was. Not the tired old man he imagined, but the man who built this life with his bare hands and could tear his down just as easily. I switched off the light. The house settled into silence. But in my chest, the storm only grew louder. Tomorrow, I'd start the next move. And he wouldn't see it coming. Morning light cut sharp through the blinds, striping the floor like bars. I'd lain awake all night, running the same thought in circles. He wanted me buried under his lies. Fine. Let him dig. I'd be waiting at the bottom with a shovel. I drove out just after sunrise, coffee thermos rattling in the cup holder, engine groaning against the chill. My hands gripped the wheel steady as stone. I wasn't heading to work or to the store or to church. I was heading to the other family. The neighborhood looked like a picture from a real estate brochure, maple trees, kid spikes on lawns, driveways scrubbed clean. But behind one of those front doors, my son had built a second life, using my name like a stolen password. She opened the door in a cardigan and slippers, hair pinned back. Her eyes widened when she saw me. She knew who I was immediately. My face was carved into the man she kissed every morning. "You must be," she started. "His father," I finished. My voice was calm. Too calm. She hesitated, then stepped aside. "Come in." The living room smelled of vanilla candles and reheated coffee. Toys scattered across the rug. A picture frame on the shelf, my son holding two kids, grinning like a man proud of his kingdom. We sat opposite each other at a dining table polished too clean. Her hands trembled slightly as she poured coffee into mismatched mugs. She didn't ask why I was there. She knew. "How long?" I asked. 3 years, she whispered, eyes dropping. "Since before your wife passed." My jaw tightened, but I stayed still. "And you knew he had a wife?" She nodded, slow. "He told me. Said it was complicated. Said she'd never leave, and I agreed to wait." Her voice cracked. "But he promised we'd have it all soon. That once the house was ours, we'd start fresh. He said you'd sign everything over eventually." The coffee steamed between us, untouched. My stomach turned. He'd sold her the same lie he tried to sell me. Only with her, he'd added sweetness and promises. With me, just duty and guilt. Then she leaned forward, eyes wet. "He also used your name. For loans. For the kids' medical bills. For the car outside." She swallowed hard. "He forged documents. Said it was temporary." I didn't want to believe it, but the letters keep coming. Collections. Banks. All in your name. My chest burned cold. I'd suspected. But hearing it in her voice was a blade between the ribs. "Show me," I said. She fetched a shoebox from the hall closet, dropped it on the table. Letters. Final notices. Loan agreements with my name typed clean across the top. His signature scrawled underneath, a clumsy imitation of mine. My pulse thudded in my ears as I thumbed through each paper. There it was, proof. My son wasn't just greedy. He was criminal. I stacked the letters neatly, slid them back into the box. She sat stiff, watching me like a prisoner waiting for a verdict. "You've been quiet too long," I said finally. She flinched. I was scared. He said he'd fix it. He said you'd never notice. You made your choice, I cut in, my voice sharp. You let him use me like a wallet. You let him stain my name with your silence. Her lips pressed tight. She didn't argue. She couldn't. I stood, chair scraping hard against the floor. But don't worry. He's about to find out what happens when a man thinks his father's blind. I left her there, hands wrapped around a cooling mug, eyes wide with something between fear and shame. Outside, the cold air hit like a slap. The children's toys sat bright and innocent on the lawn. They didn't know the man they called Dad had built their lives on lies. I climbed into my truck, engine roaring awake. My fists clenched the wheel until the leather creaked. This was no longer just betrayal. It was fraud, identity theft, war. And tonight, I'd strike back. I'd spent 40 years keeping this house standing brick, timber, sweat, blood. Tonight it wasn't shelter. It was a stage. The roast was still steaming on the table when I invited them all in. My son, his wife, their polished lies. And from the other side, the woman in the red cardigan, kids left with a neighbor, face pale as chalk. Two worlds colliding under my roof. He froze when he saw her. Dad, what's she doing here? I let the silence bleed long enough to make them squirm. Then I pulled the shoebox from the sideboard and dropped it onto the table. Letters spilled out like dirty laundry, loan notices, forged documents, my name scratched where it didn't belong. You've been busy, I said, voice flat. His wife's face drained of color. What is this? The other woman's hands shook as she shoved papers across the table. Tell her, James. Tell her what you promised me. Tell her about the house. About his name on everything. He stammered, jaw working, sweat shining at his hairline. She's lying. Shut up. My voice cracked like a whip. He flinched. Even she did. Years of holding back dropped in that single word. I spread photos across the table, him kissing her, him playing with kids, his truck parked where it didn't belong. Each picture another nail. His wife's hands flew to her mouth. Oh my God. You plan to take everything, I said, leaning forward, every word sharp. The house. The money. My name. You forged documents in my handwriting. You were ready to bury me alive. He opened his mouth, but the sound died when a knock rattled the door. Hard. Urgent. I didn't move. Let him answer. He shuffled to the door, shoulders hunched, opened it a crack. A man in a cheap suit and scuffed shoes shoved a folder into his chest. Mr. Carson? We need to talk. Now. His face turned the color of wet cement. This isn't a good time. It's not about time. It's about payment. $42,000. Past due. You used your father as guarantor. The man's voice was loud enough for everyone at the table to hear. His wife gasped. You what? The other woman looked ready to collapse. You told me it was under control. I stood slowly, steady as a soldier. Let him speak. Let him explain how he sold us all for his debts. The collector shoved another paper forward. Final notice. Next stop's the sheriff. The room spun into chaos. His wife shouting, the other woman crying, him sputtering excuses that sounded more like confessions. I just stood there, watching my son drown in the flood he'd unleashed. For years he thought I was blind. Tonight he finally saw what it looks like when the old man opens his eyes. And I wasn't done yet. The night after the confrontation, the house felt different. Too quiet, like it was holding its breath. The walls that had once carried my son's laughter now carried only echoes of his lies. By morning, word had spread. Small towns have fast tongues, faster than fire. At the diner, heads turned when I walked in. I heard his name in whispers, felt the heat of judgment shifting off me and straight onto him. Good. Let them finally see him for who he was. I sat at the counter, sipping burnt coffee, when my old friend Don, who ran the hardware store, slid onto the stool beside me. His voice was low, but sharp. You hear they're looking into your boy at the firm? I turned slow. What kind of looking? Don scratched his jaw. Boss got wind of irregularities. Someone said he's been sending emails in your name. Business deals. Loan guarantees. Even a couple of contracts. Looked official. Only thing is, you didn't send them, did you? My coffee tasted like rust. Emails? Don nodded. Yeah, printed with your signature block. Exact wording like you wrote 'em. Only the timing's all wrong. Dates when I know damn well you were with me at the store. My hand tightened around the mug. The nerve of it. He hadn't just forged papers in a safe. He'd crawled into my very identity, stolen my words, my name, my history, digital ink carving me into a fraud.
I paid my tab and left before the waitress could ask if I wanted pie. My boots struck the sidewalk like hammers. Back home, I tore open my filing cabinet, pulled out an old laptop I rarely touched. Emails flickered across the screen, contracts I'd never signed, requests I'd never written. My name at the bottom, my phone number, my life.
The rage came slow, cold. Not fire. Ice. Enough to freeze a man solid. That evening, I called him, told him to come by. He showed up with his shoulders sagging, hair uncombed, face pale. He knew. The world was starting to close in. Dad, please, he began the moment he walked in. You don't understand. It was just business. I had to make it look like you backed me. They wouldn't have trusted me otherwise. You forged my name, I said flat, the words landing like nails. He spread his hands, pleading. Only because they trust you more than me. You've always had the reputation, the connections. I just borrowed it. Borrowed? My voice cut sharp. You stole it. You poisoned it. Every word I earned over decades, you turned into your shield. His wife had followed him in, standing near the door with her arms wrapped tight across her chest. She looked at me, then at him. Is it true? He didn't answer. He didn't need to. The silence screamed loud enough. Her face hardened. She grabbed her purse, eyes glassy. You're on your own, James. And she left. The door slammed like a final verdict. He sagged into a chair, head in his hands. Dad, I don't have anywhere else to go. I stood over him, steady. That's because you burned every bridge you ever walked. You didn't just betray me, you buried yourself. He looked up, eyes bloodshot. Please, help me. For the first time in my life, I didn't see my son. I saw a stranger. A desperate, cornered man who'd use even his father's name as a mask. And I decided right then, my help would come. But not the kind he prayed for. Rain hammered the windows that night, steady as a drumbeat. The gutters overflowed, spilling dirty water onto the porch. I sat in the dark living room, lamp off, just the glow of the old TV casting blue shadows across the floor. I wasn't watching it. I was waiting. The knock came just after 10. Weak at first, then harder, desperate. I opened the door and there he was, my son. Shirt soaked, tie crooked, eyes red-rimmed. A man who'd run out of ground to stand on. Dad, he whispered. Voice cracked small. Please, let me in. I stepped aside. He stumbled past me, dripping water on the floorboards. He looked around like he barely recognized the house he once planned to steal. They're all gone, he muttered. She left. The other one won't answer my calls. Work's finished with me. I don't know where else to go. I watched him shake, arms wrapped around himself like a boy. But pity? That had burned out long ago. You should have thought about that before you forged my name. Before you tried to bury me, I said, my tone flat as stone. He dropped to the couch, head in his hands. I screwed up, I know. But you're my father. Fathers don't turn their backs. You can fix this. Please. My jaw tightened. He still believed I was the net under his fall. The old man who always caught him, no matter how deep the drop. Slowly, I reached for the remote on the table. Click. The TV screen flickered, then shifted from static to a grainy image. Not a program, footage. Black and white timestamped. He looked up, confusion knitting his brow. What's this? The video showed him, sitting in my kitchen weeks earlier. His voice clear as day. The old man won't understand a thing. He'll sign whatever we put in front of him. And once he does, he's useless. We won't need him anymore. He froze. Color drained from his face. His lips parted, but no words came out. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees. You thought I was deaf. Thought I was blind. But I've been listening. Watching. Every lie, every whisper you thought would disappear into the night I've kept. He reached for the remote, panic flooding his eyes. Dad, please delete it. If anyone sees this, I snapped the remote away, voice sharp. They will. If I decide it's time. You wanted to write me out of my own life? Now I hold the pen. His chest heaved, breath ragged. He looked smaller than I'd ever seen him. A cornered animal, shaking. Please, he whispered again, broken now. I don't have anyone left. I stood, towering over him. That's because you killed every piece of trust you ever had. You made sure of it. The rain outside roared louder, pounding against the roof like applause for the truth finally laid bare. And in that moment, watching him tremble in the blue glow of his own betrayal, I knew he hadn't seen the final strike yet. That would come soon. The rain cleared by morning, leaving the air sharp, washed clean. My son was still asleep on the couch, curled under a blanket he didn't deserve. I watched him a long moment. He looked younger, fragile almost. But I knew better. A wolf doesn't change when it's wet and cold. I'd already been to the lawyer's office by the time he woke. Papers signed. Not to him, not to his children. Everything I owned, house, savings, land, transferred to a charity for veterans. Men who'd earned respect, not stolen it. When he staggered into the kitchen, hair a mess, eyes swollen, I slid an envelope across the table. What's this? His voice rasped, cautious. Your inheritance, I said. He ripped it open, expecting keys, a deed, maybe even a check. Instead, documents from the bank, loans he'd forged, credit lines he'd bled dry, all now reassigned. The only thing in his name was a garage on the edge of town. Inside it, rusted tools, cracked concrete, and every last debt he'd tied to me. His face crumpled. You can't do this. I'm your son. No, I said, steady. You were my mistake. He dropped the papers, hands shaking. Please, Dad. I've got nothing left. You've got what you built, I said coldly. And what you built is ruins. I turned away, pulled on my coat. He called after me, voice breaking, but I didn't stop. On the porch, the morning sun cut across the wet street, turning puddles into shards of glass. The world felt lighter, cleaner. Behind me, his voice echoed through the walls, muffled and frantic. But it no longer mattered. He had wanted my house, my life, my name. Instead, I left him with the only thing he'd truly earned. He wanted my home. I left him only the ruins of his own lies.